Praise the Lord. We will continue in our verse-by-verse study again in the book of Genesis. Genesis chapter 39, where we will pick up in our verse-by-verse study today as we continue. We bow our heads in prayer. Gracious Father, we thank you for allowing us to be here another time in the sanctuary of the Lord. Father, we are grateful to you for your faithfulness, for your kindness, for the spirit of our lives, allowing us to see this new day, the first day of the week, as we gather in the house of the Lord. Father, we pray that your presence will fill this place. You will bless us with wisdom, knowledge, and understanding as we open up the holy word of God. I pray our hearts will be satisfied. There will be a thirst, there will be a hunger within our hearts for the word of God today. Heal our bodies, heal our soul, heal our mind, heal our spirit. Have thine own, we pray, Father. In the name of your Son, Yeshua. Praise the Lord. All right, so we are continuing in the book of Genesis. Genesis chapter 39. And I think we are picking up from verse 11. Verse 11. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business. And there was none of the men of the house there within. So we continue our discussion about Joseph and Potiphar's wife. And we discussed in a few lessons how Potiphar's wife, she's making sexual advances to Joseph. And it seems as though she did it publicly. She propositioned Joseph publicly. According to what we are seeing, this wasn't a secret. This wasn't some secret thing she was doing, when Joseph, get close to her quarters. She would just, sneak out of her quarters and try to proposition him. It seemed as though she was doing this thing publicly, and she didn't really care who knows or who sees what was going on. And because Joseph was not taking the bait to her public proposition, she decided she's going to do it secretly. And I guess, she probably maybe thought, well, Joseph probably is afraid that if he accepts her invitation and other people know about it, Joseph might think that he's going to get himself in trouble with his master, Potiphar. Because it is hard for us to believe that this thing was going on in her household and none of the other servants didn't know anything about it. It's like, you on the job and your boss is taking a liking to you. You as a woman, your boss is taking a liking to you, or your boss lady is taking notice of you. Somebody else is going to notice also. This thing is not going to be any secret. Even though he or she trying to keep it a secret, these things don't really stay secret for a long time. So I'm believing that most of the people in the household where Joseph was supervising, they have an idea. They knew something was happening, or Potiphar's wife is taking a likeness to Joseph. So in verse 12, and she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. And he left his garment in her hands and fled and got him out. So I guess, as I was saying, he was not accepting the proposition that she was making to him, to lie with her. And, she decided that she's going to do it in private. And maybe if she do it in private, Joseph will say, well, nobody is seeing. Nobody knows what is happening. And because nobody's seen us, because what she did, she made sure that all of the other servants was out of the house, and Joseph alone was in the house. So now this was a very appropriate time that, Joseph, nobody's watching. And, sometimes we find ourselves in these situations also. And we tell ourselves, well, nobody's watching, nobody sees. And, where sin is concerned, the devil at times will provide the opportunity or the occasion where we will tell ourselves nobody not seeing. And sometimes nobody's there. Sometimes, even though nobody's seeing or nobody's hearing what is going on, when sin is committed, the enemy have a way of making it public. Even though nobody didn't see you or nobody didn't hear you, somehow or the other, the enemy have his scheme. And that's the reason why the Bible tells us that we ought not to be ignorant of the devil's devices. So, in this part of the house where nobody was there, she cornered Joseph. Joseph is not accepting her public advance towards him. So she made sure that he was in private, and she figured that this is the time, this is the opportune moment, and Joseph is going to take the bait. And it tells us, and she caught him by his garment. She grabbed a hold of him. She take action into her hands. She take the bull by the horn. This woman is a very aggressive woman. And, she grabbed Joseph by the garment, saying, "Lie with me." And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. So this was not the time for Joseph to reason with this woman. This was not the time for him to negotiate with her. This was not the time to pray. Somebody will say, well, Joseph should have get on his knees and pray. Praying wasn't going to help. What was that? There's some situation that you can't really depend on prayer. This was not a situation for Joseph to decide to pray to the Most High God to deliver him. It was only one option Joseph had. Well, he had the other option. The other option he had was to give it to her. But the oldest other thing that he could have done is what he did. He said, "Feet, get me out of here." And, Joseph, he got out of that place as quick as possible. And, sometimes that is what we have to do, because the Bible talks about what? Flee youthful lust. The Bible talks about we're supposed to flee fornication. Some sins are so powerful, and some sins are so enticing, and they are so captivating, that if you don't run away from it, it's going to hold you. You can't stay there and try to reason it out. As soon as you see these kind of sins, you have to get out of it. You have to get away from it, because some sins are so addictive. And it's like drugs. Some people who become addicted to drugs, it's not that they go into drugs, one time and start using drugs so heavily. I was, years ago, they were talking about this police officer. He wasn't a cocaine user, but I think in one of the raids that he was on, he probably just take the coke and just put it by his nose to kind of smell it. And according to what they said, that little smell that he had, it caused him to become addictive. It may not happen to everybody, but this person become addictive by just smelling, the coke. So sin is a very powerful thing, and we must not underestimate sin. Some people say, "Well, I'm strong enough, I think I can handle that." The Bible talks about the flesh. What happened to the flesh? The flesh, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Every one of us, we don't really have any spiritual giants. People think that some people are spiritual giants, and they can overcome any kind of sin. Any one of us could succumb to sin at the right moment. If the devil get us off guard, if the devil gets you in the right moment, that weak area of your life, he can overcome us. So that's the reason why we have to be wise, and we have to use wisdom. And here we see that Joseph, what he did here, he ran away. And the text said that he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. So here we see here again, this is the second time that Joseph's garment is going to testify against him. Anybody remember the first time? You remember the first time when his brothers, he had that coat of many colors, and his brothers was envious of him. They throw him in a pit. They didn't have the guts to go through it, to kill him. They take him out of the pit, they sold him, then they came up with the scheme that they're going to take his coat and they're going to kind of rip it up as if some animal tear the coat apart, tear Joseph apart. They kill a goat and they take the goat blood and they soak the coat in the goat's blood, take it to Jacob, and Jacob recognized that it was Joseph's coat. And Jacob identified and believed that Joseph was dead. And here we see again that the same thing is happening here. Joseph is running away from this sexual advances that Potiphar's wife is making towards him, and he leaves his coat in her hand. I guess what he did, he just kind of, because he's a young man and he's brisk, he's skinny, he's in good shape, and as soon as she grabbed a hold of his coat, he was able to just slip out of it. He got one arm out of it, and the other one just go the other way. And Joseph ran away and leave his coat, but he ran away with his character. His character was intact. And I guess, he ran outside where the rest of the workers was, and, that was it. But, I'm seeing here how this lady was so aggressive. And I know that what she was doing, it was wrong, it was sinful. And, I wish if some, married women will become, have some kind of life. It's like how this one show life and energy and, although it was energy that was directed in the wrong area. But sometimes, maybe if some married women who is, legally married, you have your husband, sometimes, yes, you need to become lively. Show some life, like how this woman shows some life here. And most of the time, where activities in the bedroom is concerned, it seems as though it's the men. The men always have to initiate, and the men are the ones who always have to bring it on. And if the man don't bring it on, nothing that's going to happen. And sometimes you are chastised. They will chastise you because, you bring it on. Because if you wait for them to bring it on, nothing that would happen, as I said. And sometimes you probably not even want to bring it on, and you just place your hand on your wife and she figure that you have something in mind. But, sometimes you don't really have anything in mind. But I think, if some of the time the wife would initiate or start the process, I think it will do a lot for the relationship. All right, I don't know if anybody have anything that they want to put there. Anyway, so here we see that Joseph run away and he's outside. He leaves his coat in his master's, in Potiphar's wife's hand. She had the evidence. And I can imagine, as soon as that happened, she probably started screaming. She raised her voice, because in verse 13, he said, and it came to pass, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled forth. So as soon as Joseph get out from his garment, leave the garment in the hand of Potiphar's wife, he's on the outside, she started planning, she started thinking. And her love for him, because the way how she acted here, as if she was so in love with him, she was madly in love with him, she wanted him. And as soon as he refused her advance, he ran away from her, leaving his coat in her hand. She started to think evil against him. Her mind changed towards him. She started thinking about how she can destroy him. And, I'm asking myself the question, is love really real? And these are some very difficult questions here. Is love really real? Or is love depend on, how somebody treats you? You love somebody and you have certain expectation. Is love depend on fulfill expectation. For instance, you're in love with your wife, you're in love with your husband. Is that love real? Or is that love depend on some expectation that the husband have to fulfill? Is the love depend on some expectation that the wife have to fulfill? And yes, sir.
I do believe that the expectation is a byproduct of the love.
Give him the mic, please.
Yes, not necessarily depends on the expectation, but I believe the expectation is a byproduct of the love.
Okay. The expectation, so if the love is there, you're going to have some expectation.
Eventually. Because, for instance, you're dating, you love somebody, and eventually you get married or whatever, then what? You must have some form of expectation from that person.
Right.
As well as there's some expectation that you as a husband have to live up to.
Right.
So I believe it's a byproduct.
So, so let us suppose that you're in love with somebody, things are going good, and they are fulfilling your expectation. And the expectation that you expect them to fulfill, after a while it change, or it start to wean away, it's not happening as before. What is going to happen?
You compromise.
Pardon?
You compromise.
Compromise. So
The fire is not going to be burning at the same temperature all the time.
Okay. I don't know if any of the ladies have anything to say about that. If your husband is not fulfilling your expectation, is that love going to be still there? Is it going to be there? I know, and it can apply to all different relationships. It can apply to, it's not just husband and wife relationship. Because when you think about it, if you're in a relationship, a friendship relationship with somebody, and the reason why you're in a relationship with that person, I don't think it's because you really love that person physically. It's because you see some kind of quality, maybe you make a connection with that person. But let us suppose that that person change. What is going to happen? And when you think about, for instance, you think about a relationship between a father and a son, or a mother and a daughter. It's on a different level. It's on a different level, and even though your son or your daughter may not fulfill your expectation, you more or less still have an obligation to love them. Because, what you say, well, it's my child, it's my son, it's my daughter. But when you have a wife or you have a husband that is not living up to what you expect of him or what you expect of her, it's totally different. Or you have a friend that is not living up to the expectation that you expect of them, it's a total different thing. Yes, sir, go ahead.
But in the context of Potiphar towards Joseph, that wasn't husband and wife.
Right.
That this is a woman who is acting like I don't want to use the word God said, acting as an aggressor towards someone who belongs to her.
Right.
Right? So it is more in a fleshly, active way than love. While I agree with brother, think that love has some attachment to the responsibility of love, and you give and you expect something towards it. But this part with Potiphar's wife is more in a fleshly, against the principle of love.
Okay, so what you're saying is it wasn't real love. She just wanted his body.
That's right.
And if you notice, you see how quick love turned to hate. Love in just a little short time. All of the love that she had for Joseph, it turned to hate. And we have that evidence in the Bible. We saw where King David's son, Ammon, he fell in love with his sister. His sister, what is his name? Tamar, yes, thank you. He fell in love with Tamar, and he wanted Tamar. And, he wanted Tamar, and he pretended he was sick. I guess he had what we call in Trinidad is tabanca. He pretended that he was sick, and he only wanted one person. It's only one woman could make soup for him. on his sick bed. And he requested his sister to come to his house to make soup for him. She came and, she made the soup for him, and he suddenly recovered. And then he decided he's going to take her by force. And she pleaded with him that he should go and ask her father, King David, permission that the both of them will should get together. But he didn't do that. But he take her by force. And as soon as he did that, he already abused her, he defiled her. You know what happened? All of that love that he had for her turned to hate. Yeah. He hated her and he just threw her out. He gave the word to his servant to throw her out. And she ran out from his place, bawling. And what the scripture said, that the love that he had for her, the hatred that he had for Tamar now, after he finished abusing her, was stronger than the love that he had for her. So, yes.
I'm wondering if it was really hate he hated her, or he hated what he did to her, so he couldn't stand being around her, because every time he's around her, he hates the feeling that she is giving him, or his feeling towards her. So he hated that instead of really hating her herself.
Well, I don't know the exact reason why he hated her, but the thing is, yes, sir, go ahead.
Yeah. The same matter with David. I think I studied that part of the Bible. With David, with where he wanted to interfere his
Ammon, yes.
Yes, with Ammon interfered his sister. But remember when David, he killed Uriah?
Yes.
And he took his wife?
Right.
The Lord said that the children will never leave his house.
Right.
And he said, what you do in closed door, they're going to do to you in the public. Mm-hmm. And from that time, when God problems that caused David, his son raped his sister. Mm-hmm. And his brother particularly the kingdom from him. Mm-hmm. And he took all the concubines and he went up on the roof.
Right.
And he had sex with the public for everybody to see. That's the same thing what God told him.
Well, all of that is a part of the judgment that really came upon him. I agree with that. But what we asking about, Sister Cole is asking, why did he hate her? And I don't know exactly why. Maybe he wasn't, let us suppose he probably wasn't pleased with her performance. Maybe he was disappointed in her. Or maybe because she didn't want him to defile her. And he was a man of power. He was a prince. She was the daughter of the king also. She was in position in the palace also. But I don't think she had the kind of power that he had. And, but what the scripture said is that he hated her and he kicked her out. He threw her out. The love that he had for her, he turned to hate. And yes, sir.
I will go back and say, you see, the thing is that,
you got to put the mic by your mouth.
The thing is that after sex, after there's a strong passion for sex, and after you don't have sex, it's like you ask yourself, what really I did? What really happened? That kind of drive, that you have. Afterwards, that drive is finished. You lose everything and you get mad.
Get mad.
In that case, this is not dealing with husband and wife. This is dealing with somebody.
Yes, I understand. But what I'm seeing here is that it seems as though it seems like there's a very thin line. There's a very thin line between love and hate. It seems as though, especially in relationship, it's like a balancing act. You're balancing and you're trying to keep yourself on the side of love, and where you're just leaning, and any minute you can just go on the side of hate. It seems as though it's like a balancing act, because you see in so many different relationships where you don't take all of these people who end up in divorce court and end up fighting each other for child custody and for different assets and stuff like that. You don't think these people was in love? Yeah. They was in love. But love turned to hate. And when love turned to hate, it's a very dangerous thing. And that's what we are seeing here. Whether or not Potiphar's wife's love was real or it was fake, the love that she had for Joseph, it turned to hate. And she immediately started to think about how she can destroy him. And in verse 14, it said that she called to the men of her house and spoke to them, saying, "See, he had brought in a Hebrew to us, to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice." So she made sure that these men were outside, and I guess where she sent them, where it was, they probably could even hear her. Maybe she pretended that she was screaming, she was crying out. She called in the men. She tried to get them on her side. She tried to get the men to sympathize with her. Then she called in the men of the house and spoke to them, saying, "See, he had brought in a Hebrew to us." You see how she used the word "us"? To us, not just to me, but she involved them. She's trying to get them to sympathize with her so that they can get on her side. She brought in a Hebrew to us and to mock us. Now, first of all, she used the word "a Hebrew." And she is using the word "a Hebrew" because she is an Egyptian. And back in that time, Egypt was one of the leading or the major countries back in that time. Egypt was just like the United States today. The United States is the powerhouse. You know, Egypt was the powerhouse back in that time. You have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Just the way she was telling all these guys, like the servants and stuff, about what Sir Joseph supposedly did. Just watch the phrase, like, you see, he brought this guy in. So she's basically, I'm blaming my husband for bringing this guy in. She's putting the blame on him. It's his fault.
You're right. She's putting the blame on Potiphar. And what she's saying is that Potiphar brought in this Hebrew. And what she was doing here, she was using the word Hebrew in a derogatory way. She was really degrading the Hebrews, because what I was getting at, I was trying to say that Egyptians, back in that time, Egypt was a powerful country. And Egypt was more or less like the country that was controlling that whole area at that time. And Egyptians, it seems as though they see themselves as being above other races and, you know, people from other culture. And it wasn't because of the fact that they were racist. Because back in Bible time, when you read the Bible, you don't see a lot of instances where you can really refer to racism. Racism wasn't something that was a problem during the time of the Bible. Because whether we like it, yes or no, during the time of the Bible, the people that they were writing about, they were all the same complexion, they were all the same color. And racism wasn't a big factor amongst these people. What was the factor amongst these people? It was their religion. They were all basically the same melanated complexion people. And what was causing the problem amongst them, it wasn't race, it was their religion. And then somebody will say, Pastor Duncan, how about Moses' sister, Miriam, and when Moses was getting married to Zipporah, the Cushite woman, the Ethiopian woman, and somebody will say, well, that is racism. That was not racism. Miriam was not upset with Moses because he was getting married to somebody of a different color, somebody, you know, of a different skin complexion. Miriam was upset with Moses because he was married into somebody that was not from the Hebrew Israelite community. And the Ethiopian, I guess, maybe some of the Ethiopian back in that time probably was serving the God of the Bible. But what Miriam was upset about, it was because she, Zipporah, was not a Hebrew Israelite woman. And the reason why she was upset, it wasn't because of the fact that she was a dark-skinned person. Because Moses and Miriam, they were all dark-skinned people, according to what we are seeing in the scripture. So it wasn't because of the fact that of their color why they were really that was going on. And when you read the Bible, you will see that in the Bible never really identified anybody as white. The Bible never identified anybody as black. You're not going to find that in the Bible where the Bible identified this person as a white person or the Bible identified this person as a black person. Back in Bible time, the way how they identified people, they identified people by the country that they're from. The Bible talk about the Egyptians, they talk about the Ethiopians, and they're talking about, Cushite, and they're talking about people in that kind of way. And when you talk about color, for instance, today, we call people white people. But that term that we are using today, when we call somebody white, it was only invented in 1661. When you read history, you will never find in history before 1661 where they called anybody white or they called anybody black. That term, white people, was invented in 1661 by the British people during the time when Great Britain controlled those 13 colonies before the United States had their independence. They controlled 13 colonies over there. During that time, they invented that word white people, and they have the laws where they call the anti-miscegenation laws. They brought in these laws because back in that time, they have a shortage of British women. All this is in history. They have a shortage in British women. During the time when Great Britain controlled those 13 colonies, to every one woman that they have from Great Britain living in those 13 colonies, they have 10 men. So they have one woman and, they have 10 men competing to get that one woman. And what was happening is that during that time, that one British woman, instead of she getting married or getting in a relationship with these British men, what they were doing, they were getting into a relationship with the slaves or the men of color that was considered to be free men. So that upset these people. So what they did, they start boatloading women, British women coming in to satisfy the needs of these British men. Because back in that time, they wasn't calling them white. Because as I said before, the word white people didn't exist. They used to call them British, or they call them, by whatever country they're from. But the term that we use today, white people, didn't exist. So what was happening, why they brought in this term, white people, is because all of these people that the British women that they're bringing in, these British women, when they come into these colonies, they fall in love with these black guys. And to put a stop to these women falling in love with all of these black guys, what they did, they brought in what they call the anti-miscegenation laws, meaning that they're going to make a separation amongst the races. That is when the separation between the races really come. Because back in that time, I guess that was the time that they even put the tag on us as black people. Amen. And they put the tag on these British people, they start calling them white people. But before that, they used to call them British, or they call them Christians, or they call them Europeans. But they never before that term, white people was ever used. And from that time, they caused all of these separation. And they brought in different laws because the anti-miscegenation rules that they brought in came with a lot of different laws. Because when they brought in that law, you find that the people who they termed to be white, people of color couldn't take them to court. There was a time that black people, even though a white person do something that is wrong, you couldn't take them to court. It was against the law for you to take them to court. And back in that time, you find that they brought in these laws that black people wasn't supposed to own ammunition or gunpowder, all of these things. So the point I'm trying to say is that the term that we use today, and we calling these people white people, it wasn't there. They used to call them British. or they call them Christians, or they call them French. And the word white came in when they brought in these anti-miscegenation laws so that they can make a separation between the races. And it's back there, all of these different privileges that European people have today. That was the time that all of these privileges that they have today was put in place. Amen.
But Pastor,
Yes.
just to interject a little.
Yes, go ahead.
When I go back to study direct from the Bible, when Daniel had a vision of the four governments, what power would rule.
Right.
And when Alexander was the one, because the history says that the Greek was the first civilization to document systematic studies on human behavior. So they come with an idea because they was philosophers, and it says that they call it leadership philosophy. So they said the people are supposed to lead. They're supposed to have some kind of trait. And what was it? They said they're supposed to have straight nose, thin lips, fair skin, which you call white today, and blue eyes. They say these are the people that are supposed to live. They tell them that these are the people that live for all the races in the world. So if you don't have this kind of skin color, you are simple as slave. So it doesn't matter about your educational degree. You're only a well-dressed, just so they see you. You have to be seen and not heard. So what they did now, when the Romans invaded Greece, the one thing that, because the Greek was the first country in the world to have libraries. So they have all the different scrolls there. And when the Romans attacked them, they take all the scrolls and they introduce everything right over the wall. So all the other countries that the Romans control, like England, because they're from Africa to England, so they begin to break away. So all the kind of philosophers are using today is from the Greek. So right now the world is existing on dead man philosophy.
Yeah, well,
I using today.
Yeah, well, I agree what you're saying there, but what I'm talking about is that they didn't really identify them as being white. They identified them as being Romans. They identified them as being British.
That's what the idea comes from.
They identified them, as being, Italian. Because even back in that time, do you know that the Italians and the Portuguese, they wasn't considered to be white people? It's only recently they elevate these people to become white. It was whiteness was really reserved for people like the British and the French and people in that group. But the Italians and the Portuguese, they were graduated into that status. Amen. Okay, anyway, let's go forward. Where we are now. It says that, verse 15, and it came to pass when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried that he left his garment with me and fled and got him out. So who she's talking to here? She's talking to the other servants, and she's trying to get their sympathy. And she's explaining to them what happened. But she's lying. And if you notice here that these guys, they didn't really say anything. Because they know, as I said before, they were not stranger to what was going on in the house. They saw that this woman had a liking, or she's taken a likeness towards Joseph, and I guess they probably saw some of these advances that she was making towards Joseph. So when she explained her side of the story to them, they didn't really reply back because they know that it didn't really fit what they really knew what was going on, so they never answered her. And it tells in verse 16, and she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. So she hold on to the garment, and she's going to use that as evidence against Joseph. We are in Genesis chapter 39, verse 17. And she spoke to him. So her husband is home. Potiphar came home. And she spoke to him according to these words, saying, the Hebrew servant which you have brought to us, according to what Anel just explained to us, he was trying to put the blame on Potiphar, her husband. That is because of him. He brought this servant into her house, and it's because of him why this is happening. And she said that the Hebrew servant that he brought to us came in unto me to mock me. You know, when we first came across this word mock, it was when it was dealing with Abraham and Sarah. You remember when Isaac had his, I think it was his 3-year-old birthday. He was, I think it was 3 or 4, and they had a birthday celebration for Isaac. And Sarah complained that Ishmael was mocking Isaac, and they take that to mean that Ishmael disrespected Isaac back in that time. So the word mock, the terminology could be that you playing with somebody, because the word mock could mean play, or it could mean also disrespect. You see, in this context here, the writer is using it here to say that, or Potiphar's wife is saying that Joseph mocked her, or disrespected her, or tried to rape her. But when you use it back in the time when we were talking about Isaac and Ishmael, it was not saying that Ishmael disrespect Isaac, because Isaac was only 3 years old. In what kind of way you think a 17-year-old boy could disrespect a 3-year-old? What can he do to him to disrespect him? So that's what I'm saying. When it is used back there, it was saying that Ishmael was playing. He was playing with his brother. Because the word mock have, in different contexts, it could mean play, and it can also mean to disrespect. But in this context here, it is being used that Joseph was disrespecting Potiphar's wife. And it tells us, and it came to pass in verse 18, as I lifted up my voice and cried. So she said that she cried out, she shouted out for help, help! That he left his garment with me and fled out. So she's explaining all of this to her husband. And it came to pass when his master, that is Potiphar, heard the words of his wife, which she spoke to him, saying, after this manner did your servant to me, that his rod was kindled. Potiphar become upset. Remember, Potiphar had Joseph in a very important position. Joseph was the manager of his household. Everything that Potiphar had, Joseph was in control. It is because of Joseph why Potiphar becomes so prosperous. He trusted Joseph. And here we see that he came home and his wife is giving him this story here. And, even though he was so, he trusts Joseph so much, he didn't go and ask Joseph anything. And, I want to ask a question, as a husband, what will you do? What will you do if you come home and your wife is giving you that kind of story? Let's suppose you come home and your wife is in the house and she's crying. And she said to you, the cable man on the outside, he made a pass towards me and he tried to violate me. And you look outside and you see the cable man outside. What are you going to do?
I have a belief, as we look into it now, I have a suspicion that this is not the first time this thing happening with Potiphar's wife.
Well, maybe so. Maybe so.
It was happening before. And that is why the servants did respond, probably did respond. And that is why Potiphar wasn't so harsh on Joseph.
Well, we don't know if it happened before.
I have a belief.
Okay, well, we don't know that. But what I'm saying is that the way how Potiphar deal with the situation here, Potiphar, he really liked Joseph. And he trusted Joseph. And when his wife gave him that kind of a story, he didn't say, well, I'm going to have to go and talk to Joseph and hear his side of the story. And here we see, as soon as he heard what was going on, he became angry. And I'm saying that if I was in Potiphar's shoes, I'm not going to stay here and, criticize Potiphar for not going to ask Joseph anything. Because if I'm in that situation and, my wife gives me that sad story, she's in tears, crying and telling me that this man tried to do her, rape her or abuse her or whatever, and the man is outside and I know where he is, I'm not going to go to ask him anything. I know the way how the flesh will think. And I know maybe some of you will say, well, Pastor Duncan, you shouldn't say that. You should maybe go and ask him, to hear his side of the story, or maybe you should call the police. But no, I'm telling you right now, the way of my flesh will think.
Yeah.
I will be in the same frame of mind as Potiphar. You hear that kind of story about somebody trying to make advance towards your wife. It's going to get you angry. And even though somebody will say, well, I'm going to pray about it and ask the Lord, what kind of step I should take. But, we're talking about flesh and blood. We're talking about people who is flesh and blood. And you hearing that kind of thing from your wife is going to get you upset. Somebody have your hand up?
What part of our wife said she was blaming her husband. But based on the constitution of Egypt, Potiphar is in violation of contempt of court. Because what the Egyptians believe, once you're a shepherd, you're not supposed to mix with the royals and also the Egyptians. Because the Egyptians only deal with cows. They have nothing to do with sheep. Anything a shepherd thinks they make sheep, they have nothing to do with you. So it's a kind of violation.
Well, yes.
Yes. So that is the reason why she's blaming the husband, because he did something undercover,
right,
to bring him in the house, inside the royal house.
Well, they probably wasn't enforcing it yet at that time, because we know when the 70 Hebrew Israelite people go down to Egypt, they have us to keep them separate. They put them in Goshen to live. Yes, man, go ahead. Yes, somebody back there.
Could it be several things? Could it be that the servants didn't respond because they were servants, they didn't want to respond to the wife or even say something because they were afraid of losing whatever job they had or what? Or it could also be that, as our brother said, she was doing it before and somebody withstanding like Potiphar. If you hear something like that going on, he could be killed. Mm-hmm. But because of the standing that he had, he just was upset with his wife, but in order to, keep his manhood as
okay, write it down.
Yeah, so in order to do that, he just put Joseph in jail to satisfy the people, because people might hear, oh, your wife said something and you keep the man in the house. So he was upset with her, but he put Joseph in jail instead of killing him.
Well, the thing is that we're talking about the servant responding. The servants could not respond with the truth. They couldn't go and say, well, we noticed, for over the last year that you're running him down and you're trying to get him into your bed, and now you're saying that he tried to rape you. They couldn't say that. So the best thing for them was to just close them out. They know the truth, because something like that can't happen in the household without somebody seeing what was going on. They knew exactly what was going on. And as you said, we don't know if it probably happened before. Because, as you just commented, the way how Potiphar handled the situation, and I'm so sorry that we don't have enough time that we could have really get to the end where we could have really brought out the whole thing here. Because when you look at the whole thing, you will see that Potiphar did not deal with Joseph severely. Because Potiphar was in charge of the prison, and Potiphar was a high-ranking official in Egypt. And a crime as this, Joseph being accused of rape, Potiphar had the authority was to execute Joseph. Right. But he didn't execute Joseph. And I'm going to try to close this up, because I don't want to come back in this chapter next week. So what it says, he took what the wife said to him, and I don't blame him. Because why are you going to, even though you know that she have a habit of accusing the servants of doing things like that. Let's suppose that she did that before, as one of you just said. Potiphar is not going to come out and tell his wife, well, I don't believe you. So he have to pretend, even though you don't believe her, he have to pretend that, he is believing what she's saying. But according to his action, what he tells us in verse 19, is it? And it came to pass when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spoke to him, saying, After this manner did your servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. Who his wrath was kindled against? Who his wrath was kindled against? The text didn't say, but it went on to say, And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king prisoners were bound, and he was there in the prison. Now, what is happening here? Potiphar did not deal with Joseph severely. And what some interpreters are saying is that Potiphar did not really believe what his wife was saying, but he couldn't really come out and tell her that. So what he did, he didn't really punish Joseph in the way that was, he was supposed to punish him. But what he did, he took him and he put him into the prison where the rest of the prisoners were kept. Those prisoners that violated the king's laws where they were kept, he put them in that prison. And if you go down to chapter 40, according to what chapter 40 is telling us, the prison that Potiphar put Joseph in is right in Potiphar's yard or in his compound. Potiphar prison, the prison that Joseph was put in, it seems as though it was either in the basement where Potiphar lived, or it was in the same compound where Potiphar lives. Now let me just read this, and you can just turn to chapter 40 and from verse 1. And it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord, the king of Egypt, and Pharaoh was angry against two of his officers, against the chief of the butler and against the chief of the baker. Verse 3. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard. Who is the captain of the guard? Into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. So according to what this is telling us, Potiphar is the captain of the guard, and where the prison was in the same area where Potiphar had his house. And there's a possibility that it might be the same yard, it might be the basement, but Joseph was taken from Potiphar's house and he was put in an area also where Potiphar was in charge. And this is what the text is telling us. So he didn't really deal with Joseph really severely. And some interpreters are saying that, there's a possibility that Potiphar was still in relationship with Joseph, because Joseph was the one that caused him to become so prosperous. So even though he wasn't in his house, he probably from time to time used to go and consult with Joseph to find out how to run the business. And you'll notice as we close this up, chapter 39, it tells us, verse 20, and Joseph's master took him and put him in the prison, a place where the king prisoners were bound, and he was there in prison. But Yahweh was with Joseph. This is the puzzling part. Yeah. Joseph is in prison, and here the text is telling us that Yahweh is with Joseph. In a situation like this, Joseph is facing trouble. You're facing trouble. You're headed into danger. And Yahweh is with you. What do you expect from Yahweh? I know the time is gone already. But you're headed into trouble. Trouble is before you. You're facing trouble. And Yahweh is with you. What do you expect from Yahweh? Deliverance. Amen. I know some of you might say, well, you don't want to say that. But deliverance. But here we see that deliverance didn't come. Yahweh didn't deliver Joseph. But here the text is saying that Joseph is placed in prison. And in the prison, Yahweh present didn't come in the form of deliverance. But even though Joseph was in prison, the Most High God was still with Joseph. He was with him just the same way like when he was in the big house. And he showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of all the keepers of the prison. So here we see, as soon as Joseph go into that prison, the Most High God gave him favors in the eyes of the supervisor over the prison. And I want to believe that. Potiphar he passed the word on to this guy, even though the guy who was keeping the prison didn't know Joseph. Potiphar made sure that he communicated to the prison official in regards to Joseph. So that as soon as Joseph entered into the prison official was ready to put Joseph in charge. And he said in closing, but Yahweh was with Joseph and showed him mercy and give him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. And whatever they did there, he was the doer of it. So according to what we are seeing here, Joseph, he didn't really receive any harsh penalty. And he was placed in a supervisory position even while he was in prison. And as we close in verse 23, the keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because Yahweh was with him, and that which he did, Yahweh made it to prosper. So here we see the same way that the Most High God was moving with Joseph. Here Joseph, ended up in prison, and the Most High God was still with him even while he was in prison. We're going to wrap it up there for today. Anybody have any question as we close? Yes.
Oh.
I was looking at the biography of Joseph, and when this thing occurred, they had a trial in the house. So when they had a trial in the house, the judge came in, and the way that she pulled the coat off from Joseph, they realized she was the wrong person, because they checked the side, she pulled the coat. So if you was in purpose, you could have it wrong. So they see the side they put, and one of the little child inside, one of the daughter, set Joseph free.
But the thing is, we don't have the side of the woman. Something that is very important, because in some other writings, they give the woman give her version of the story, and her version of the story did not correspond with what we are reading here in the Bible. And they didn't even give the name of the woman. All they did, they call her Potiphar's wife. And there are other people who are painting the picture that she was an innocent woman. And, we're going to leave it there. All right. Father, bless us as we go forward. We ask these favors in the name of your Son, Yeshua. Amen.